The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 194. What a big week it is for Michigan basketball. And Team 135 is hard at work with 2 practices in the books. That and plenty more coming up on this week's show. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. It's a big week for Michigan basketball. The outright B10 Championship is within our reach. Just find a way to win one more game, and it's a championship that doesn't say co. As is usually the case, we're recording the show on Tuesday evening, so by publishing time on Wednesday, we'll already know the outcome of the Illinois game. Regardless of what happens in Champaign, Michigan will return home on Saturday night to host Indiana at Chrysler and honor this year's senior class. And what a great time it is for Michigan basketball, especially after some really lean years in the 90s and the early 2000s. I hope we're all enjoying it. We hope the good times will return soon for Michigan football and Team 135, hopefully this fall. But the reality is there's a lot of work that needs to be done first. Coach Brady Hoke is well aware of that, and Team 135 already has 2 practices in the books. They'll be off this week for spring break. They'll be back on the practice field next week, beginning March 11th. With so much taking place on the Michigan scene, we'd love to hear your thoughts here on the show. Our phone lines are open 24/7 for your calls. If there is something you would like to say about anything Maize and Blue, I'd love to hear it, especially if we can use it on an upcoming show. I've been mentioning for a couple of years now that we'd like to have a fan feedback segment, so come on and help us get it started. Call 313-263-4842 anytime. That number again is 313-263-4842. That's our studio line. Give us your name, tell us where you're calling from, and then say your piece. So come on, Michigan fans, give us a shout. You can also email me at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast @yahoo.com. On this week's Michigan Game Day segment, we get 2 for the price of 1. Our guest is beat writer Mark Snyder from the Detroit Free Press, who covers Michigan football and basketball. We'll talk about this final weeks of the hoop season, the regular season, and then get some of Mark's thoughts on what's happening with spring football practice. That's coming up next, here on this week's Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. Back with us on Michigan Game Day this week, Michigan beat writer Mark Snyder from the Detroit Free Press. Mark, great to have you back on the show.
Glad to be with you.
Well, another big, huge week actually coming up in Michigan basketball. And before we talk about that, Saturday night, big game against Minnesota, clinched at least a tie in the Big Ten. And Mark, that started as a struggle, but Michigan found the rhythm, made big plays down the stretch, which is now kind of this team's MO. They've done this all season, haven't they?
Yeah, I think it's almost symbolic of their season as a whole, too. It's an interesting perspective that they've had because, this season started slow, in the non-conference with 6-4, and then as it grew, they found a rhythm, and that's kind of what happens in games. I don't think it's by design, but that's just the nature of this team. Every team has its own feeling and the way it turns into itself, and that's kind of the way this one works.
I know Coach Beilein mentioned last week that he'd like to get off earlier in the games, a little bit hotter, but do you think it's worrisome heading into the tournament? This is sort of this team's MO right now?
Worrisome because when you play a better team, you can see that you can't come back. You saw that against Wisconsin, and you saw it against Iowa. Those are the better teams in the Big Ten, and they couldn't come back on them. So that was the biggest concern, I think, at this point, especially when you have another team that can score points. They can get out on you, and then as good as your offense is, offense may be the best in the Big Ten and one of the best in the country, you still have to be able to come back on that team and outscore them. And if they're going to keep scoring, then you're never going to catch up.
Well, Saturday night, Mark, Nick Stauskas was as efficient, I think, as we've seen him in the last couple of weeks. Do you still like his chances at being Big Ten Player of the Year?
Yeah, I think so. I think that people look at the top team, and I mean, a lot of voters look at the top team and they say who's the best player in that team, and then they kind of build their list from there. So I think for that reason, he definitely has a chance. I mean, he's improved himself in a lot of categories, but he's not going to win the Big Ten scoring title. And I mean, he passes the ball a bit, but it's not quite as much as he was earlier in the year. So I guess it's how people are going to view it. Are they going to view the season and put all the heat on that great start he had, the 8 and, when Michigan was 8-0 in Big Ten and everything, or are they going to look at the second half and say he leveled off quite a bit in the second half of the Big Ten season and just had a couple of big games? So I think it's going to be some perspective, but I think that Nick is, if he has a couple of big games this way, he can pull away. He kind of controls his own fate in that race, I think, at this point.
Well, Nick has plenty of help, as he did on Saturday night. The other key contributors, Karis LeVert, continues to amaze me. Glenn Robinson III looks like he's getting more aggressive over the last few games. And when Michigan has Nick, Karis, and Glenn in that groove at the same time, it is just so extremely difficult to defend this team, isn't it?
It is, and that's what makes this team unique. Unlike last year, where every game, the game plan is the same. How were they going to defend Trey? Were they going to defend him this way? Or were they going to defend him that way? Now, you have three guys, and if you take Stauskas away, LeVert is understanding that he can step up, and Robinson is getting more confidence in the last week and a half of being more aggressive offensively, even though he's been doing some of the other things. So there's an opportunity here for Michigan to make waves because they have those three guys, plus they can get contributions from other places. I mean, Jarek Walton had a burst there in the middle of the Big Ten season where he played really well, and so he's shown that he can do that. He's just got to get back to that point. And Zach Irvin can get hot, though he has only in spurts. And Jordan Morgan is playing very well in the middle, and I think that's really an underrated part of this so far.
Other teams in the conference have the 3 double-digit scores, just like the 3 for Michigan that we've talked about. But what maybe is separating Michigan from the rest of the teams is that they are getting a lot of help from that supporting cast.
Yeah, and I think it's the way people approach that. I think to try to defend it. You can't, with other teams, when you have 3 double-digit scorers like that, they can kind of stick. There's a one guy that stands out, the Devin Marble, the Yogi Ferrell, the Frank Kaminsky, whatever. The other guys are in a situation where it's not quite the same. At Michigan, obviously Stauskas is the big name, but LeVert has put up more than Stauskas on a number of occasions. And Robinson has shown the ability. I mean, his jump shot hasn't been there, but athletically, he can get the ball in the basket. Those points, you can't guard against them because they're coming on alley-oops or backdoor cuts or, athletic follow-up shots by him. So I think that, it's hard team to prepare for, and that's what Michigan's maybe greatest advantage at this point. It's not a single player, it's the group.
Well, Mark, as you mentioned in the Sunday Free Press, the Big Ten title, at least it's a co-title right now, raises the expectations to maybe even another Final Four run. Just over the last 2 seasons alone, the bar has now been raised for Michigan basketball expectations, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it has, and I think that this season has raised it more than last year, because you can look at last year, say, okay, they had 2 NBA players and a third who was playing like an NBA lottery pick in Mitch McGarry in that tournament, and that's really what made them an elite team. But you say that's an aberration because those guys aren't here this year. McGarry is, but only in in body, really not in game or spirit. So when you look at how that all breaks down, it's a little more interesting because now this team has done it with different players mostly. Even though Stauskas and Robinson contributed last year, it wasn't quite the same, and LeVert barely did anything last year. What they've done is they've proven, they've proven that they can sustain it with different players, and that's kind of the beeline thing, and that's what's making this program more respected, is because now 3 years in a row they've been at the doorstep of the Big Ten title. This year they won it, and they'll probably win it outright if they win one of these last 2 games. Last year it was a roll of the ball by Jordan Morgan against Indiana to get another one, and 2 years ago they won it, on the last day of the season they shared it. So this is really a unique program now because they've been the most consistent over the last 3 years in this conference.
And the one aspect of their game that I'm seeing in the last month or so, Mark, and maybe it's just me, but the thing that is most impressive to me is the mental toughness of this team. especially late in games where you think the other team like Minnesota Saturday night is getting back into it, and it's a 2-point game, and Michigan makes a play. Spike Albrecht makes a play, and this team just toughens up.
Yeah, it's interesting because they've, like you said, Spike Albrecht made the play. It wasn't Stauskas or Lever or Reffinson or Walton. I mean, it was just always another guy making something. They've been clutched all year. When Walton won the game in Nebraska and Michigan State, he made a big play, and Robinson made a big play. And, I think that these are moments that this team understands that it's not, the 15th youngest team in the country, which it is in age, but it's not acting that way. And that's the most remarkable thing, is that you see issues like this with young teams. And there's a reason that people are cautious of young teams, because they get into the crunch time. They can play well if they have talent, but if they get into the crunch time, they can't handle the pressure. And this team has handled the pressure as well as any team in the Big Ten for sure, if not the country.
No, absolutely. I agree with that. And, of course, with this week being a huge week, you head into action against Illinois with a chance to clinch an outright Big Ten title. You get the feeling this team isn't one of those teams that's going to slack up or loosen up. They're going to be mentally tough and try to finish it out this week.
I think so, because I think they don't take the wider view. This is, I know a lot of times coaches can preach that, game by game, but this team has just kind of embraced that, and you've seen that, by the way they've reacted, not losing 2 games in a row, staying up that whole week against top 10 opponents. But those are hard things to do, especially, again, for a young team. So that's the example that they're being able to set here, is that they can take each game as an individual and continue to win. Now, what that's going to mean, for the Wolverines next week in the Big Ten Tournament is another situation. But for this week, I would expect them to be competitive in the 2 games. And even if they drop the one at Illinois, which is possible because Illinois is playing fantastic defense right now, there's still, I think, the senior day for Morgan and the last home game of the season, that Michigan will be pretty fired up against Indiana.
Mark, John Beilein has done just an outstanding job this year putting this team together, considering you lost 2 players from last year's national runner-up to the NBA. You lose Mitch McGary in December. Do you think maybe this is his finest coaching job in his long career? He's
done a lot of fine coaching jobs. He got a team that, was led by Kevin Fitzgerald and Mike Gandy to the Elite Eight and basically a shot or 2 from the Final Four. So that season still ranks up there. But this one's very impressive because, he has more talent this year, but at the same time, he's had to adjust. They went into this season planning to have a potentially All-American center, Mitch McGary, and they had to adjust on the fly without him. So the younger guys had to learn to lead, and they had to adjust, not have a 2-post offense, 2 big-man offense. And, the confidence had to come with Jordan Morgan and John Horford that they could step in there and handle that role, even though all the attention had been on McGary. So I think that this team has grown, this team has learned, and that's what Beilein's trademark is. That he can grow a player through his career, and he can grow a team through a season. And right now, we're seeing the fruits of that.
Our guest here on our Michigan Game Day segment this week, Michigan beat writer Mark Snyder, Michigan basketball beat writer, and also Michigan football beat writer. So, Mark, I just wanted to have you put your other hat on for just a couple of minutes with spring practice underway. There are so many areas we all know that need attention. What do you think would be priority number 1 this spring?
I think you got to come out of it with an offensive line that you think can work. Even though you're not going to have Eric Magnuson, who will probably be the left tackle, you got to win with confidence in that offensive line. And the running backs need that confidence. The quarterbacks need that confidence. They need to believe that they're not going to get hammered and pummeled like Devin Gardner was last year. That's Gardner is athletic enough to make plays. If he can't go, Shane Morris obviously showed that he can do some stuff and do enough stuff, and will be coached up by Doug Nussmeier to be effective. But they need an offensive line to prove that it can hold the blocks, and if not, win some of those battles. And that's really, they need to find a unit that can do that even without Magnuson, and then be able to plug Magnuson in there in the fall.
Well, last week, Devin surprised a lot of folks by taking reps in practice. It sounded like even Brady was a bit surprised that he played at what we heard was almost full speed in the reps that he did take. Brady said it's a competition at quarterback. He said that in January. Do you think that's a real competition, or is Brady trying to light a fire under Devin this spring?
Well, I think at the time Brady said it, number 1, he didn't think Devin was going to be full go in the spring. So that, he puts a little faith in Shane Morris that way and a little confidence to play at a high level during the spring when he thought Devin wasn't going to be there pushing. Now that they're both there, yeah, I think it is it's a competition now, but it's a competition that Devin should win because he has so much experience, because he's made big plays, because he's been in those situations, and Shane hasn't. But I think that Brady has to honor that as a real competition, as he said, because this team lost games last year, and the offense was so inconsistent. I mean, for all the highs that Gardner had last year, he had the Notre Dame game, he had the Indiana game, he had the Ohio State game. There was so many lows and so many problems that they hit the other end. To be an elite quarterback, it's not necessarily those high moments. It's more about the consistency and knowing what you're going to be able to give your team every time. And Devin's got to be able to do that. I mean, he can't. The first half of the year, he lost games for them, or he put them in careless situations, let's say, with his turnovers. And then in the second half, when he became more gun-shy with turnovers, he was taking too many sacks and holding the ball too long. And that's when the offense stalled. So I think these are things that he's going to learn, and I think he'll be better for that. And Shane hasn't been in those situations. He played one game and was a freshman, and I think that was an eye-opening experience for him. So I think there could be a true quarterback competition this spring, but I think by the fall, this should be Devin's job if he's healthy.
Well, along with the competition for jobs on both sides of the ball, which is always good, there were coaching shakeups on the defensive side of the ball where Brady moved people around there. Do you think that's a good thing?
Well, I think he had to. I think he had. I don't know about all the moves he made, but I think he wanted to show that there's a statement. He wanted to kind of have something different, because it wasn't the defensive year that they had the first 2 years under Madison, and I think that's part of the issue that they're going to have to face, is that they need to find something different. The cornerbacks just weren't performing under Kurt Mallory the way they should have. They let up too many big plays at the least opportune times, and there wasn't enough pass rush. So I think that really, when you have one unit really playing as expected, and that was the linebackers, then you've got an opportunity that you need to work on those other areas. You need to work on the pass rush. You need to solidify the back end. And even though Jabril Peppers is going to come in this fall and supposedly light up the world, there's still a lot to go either. And they need to have something solid, and they need to have real competition at both of those spots, up front end and back end.
Do you think it's a good idea that Brady has sort of pulled back from his coaching responsibilities with the defensive line to, maybe spread himself around, be in all of the meetings and not so focused on that defensive line? I
don't know. I really can't answer that. I'm not in their meetings. I don't know what he does most of the time. We only see him briefly every week. So I really can't speak to how his time is spent. And he said he still wants to work with the tackles even though it's not his name. I think that's what he loves to do, and this is his job, and he gets to do that. I bet there are a lot of responsibilities that he has, and someone felt that they were not being attended to enough. And in terms of getting around to other positions or whatever, whether that's him, whether that's someone suggesting that to him or whatever. I mean, he realized after 3 years something needed to change, and maybe it's just symbolic, and he'll be doing the same stuff, but it's just a public statement to the contrary. But I think that we're going to find out that someone said maybe he felt he just needed to change his routine up a little bit, I guess.
Well, Mark, it sounds like Doug Nussmeier is going to take his time installing the new offense, let the players learn as much as they can without overloading them. But I found what he said the other day very interesting, and maybe even more a point of emphasis this spring. He says the mentality and the attitude has to change with this offense regardless of what you do schematically. That really is a key to any improvement first, isn't it?
Well, I think it's more of a specifics, that he's discussing, and that he understands that the number one thing that this offense needs to do is move forward. It doesn't necessarily need to move forward at 40 yards every pass play, but it needs to move forward. And last year, it moved back too many times, and that was the biggest problem with the season. Whether it was moving back because of turnovers or whether it was moving back because of sacks and tackles for loss, it was all too much. And that's where he's going to start, and then he's going to, get plays in there. But he understands he's got a playmaker in Gardner who can change games, and that's not going to change no matter what offense he's running. He did it in Borges' offense, which is maddeningly inconsistent. So under Nussmeier, who believes his offense is obviously more productive, as we've seen it a number of spots, that's going to come, but he needs to control the controllables at first, and that's his first issue.
Well, year 4 for any program is always big. Most fans expect a real jump up in productivity, but after a 7-6 season, more so this year, you think when you listen to Brady, he really does get it heading into the spring, doesn't he?
Well, I think he understands that something's got to happen. Whether he gets what he gets or not. That this is if they go 8 wins again, he's in trouble. I mean, I think that it's just the nature of this position and what you have to do, and he's trying to face that. I mean, he understands the changes have to be made, and that's why he's making them. And whether it's his doing or someone else's doing, that's just the nature of it. And 4 years is 4 years. I mean, and when you're going the wrong way, you don't get the slack, and he understands that, and so that's why you've seen so many changes.
Well, and it's going to be an interesting spring on the football field, and of course the basketball field and the basketball court in the coming weeks. So our guest today on our Michigan Game Day segment has been Michigan football and basketball beat writer Mark Snyder from the Detroit Free Press. Mark, as always, great to have you on the show, and hope to talk to you soon in the coming week.
Glad to be with you.
It's been another incredibly busy week on the Wolverine athletic scene, and we'll take a look at that next on Wolverine Quick Hits as we wrap it up for another week here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits this week, junior forward Saisha Gori was named to the All-Big Ten second team by the coaches and media on Monday afternoon, as the University of Michigan women's basketball team had 4 players receive recognition from the conference. Freshman Sierra Thompson, junior Shannon Smith each received honorable mention from the coaches and the media, while junior Nicole Elmblad earned honorable mention from the media. Senior Val Driscoll was Michigan's sportsmanship recipient, so congratulations to all of those ladies. Michigan, 17-12 overall, 8-8 in the Big Ten, is the number 7 seed in the upcoming Big Ten Tournament and will play number 10 Indiana tomorrow night, Thursday, at Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. The game is slated for 6:30 p.m. and can be seen live on the Big Ten Network, so the best of luck to Coach Barnes Arico and the Lady Wolverines in the Big Ten Tournament. The number 13 ranked University of Michigan hockey team scored a season-high 3 power play goals, including the game winner from Phil DiGiuseppe at 10:30 of the third period, in a 4-3 win over Ohio State on Sunday afternoon at Nationwide Arena. Alex Kyle and Luke Moffitt gave Michigan an early 2-goal cushion with first-period power play goals, and Derek DeBlois also scored for Michigan, which improved to 2-0-1 in its last 3 games. Steve Racine made 34 saves to earn the win in the net, including several highlight reel saves in the third period. Michigan will host Michigan State at 7 p.m. on Friday at Yost Ice Arena, and then head back on Saturday for the second game of the weekend series at Munn Ice Arena. The Wolverines again ranked number 13th heading into this week's action, with a record of 16-10-4 overall, 8-6-2 in the Big Ten. UCLA's Cody Poteet struck out 13 in a 2-hit complete game performance as the Bruins shut out the University of Michigan baseball team 5-0 on Sunday afternoon to conclude play at the USA Baseball Irish Classic at Coleman Field at the USA Baseball National Training Complex in Gary, North Carolina. Poteet had a strikeout in every inning for UCLA. Michigan's hits occurred in the second inning on a 2-out single from junior Kendall Patrick and a 2-out double in the ninth by junior Jackson Glines. Poteet did not walk a batter in facing 2 batters over the minimum. A 2-run double from Justin Hazard in the second and an RBI base hit by Shane Zeal in the third gave the Bruins an early cushion. UCLA took a 4-0 lead in the fifth on Zeal's single through the right side that scored an unearned run. The Bruins tacked on a run in the sixth via a Chris Keck single. Sophomore Evan Hill was tagged with the loss, allowing 10 hits and 4 earned runs with 4 strikeouts in 5.1 innings pitched. Michigan's bullpen did not allow a hit in the final 3.2 innings. The Wolverines 2-8-1 heading into this week's action, and because it's spring break, they have a full slate of games down in Florida. Softball is playing a couple of makeup games, believe it or not. Last week they were rained out in sunny California, so they'll be playing UCLA in a couple of ball games this week. Sophomore Austin Shepard of the number 7 ranked University of Michigan women's gymnastics team was named Big Ten Event Specialist of the Week by the conference office on Monday. Shepard receives the award for the third time this season on the strength of her 3-event performance against BYU and Kent State last Friday. Shepard is ranked number 8 nationally on vault and has the highest average on that event of any gymnast in the Big Ten. U of M will return to home action this Friday, facing number 6 Utah and number 8 UCLA in a tri-meet at Chrysler Center. The meet will begin at 7 p.m. In a final note, the number 2 ranked University of Michigan men's swimming and diving team led wire-to-wire to capture its 4th consecutive Big Ten Conference Championship on Saturday in front of the home crowd at Canham Natatorium. The Wolverines tallied 889 points over the 4 days of competition, blowing by second-place Indiana and third-place Ohio State. So congratulations to the Big Ten champions, the University of Michigan men's swimming and diving team. They'll next be in action this Saturday down in Columbus at Ohio State's Last Chance Meet. The Big Ten Tournament is coming up fast, and spring football will be in the news for the next month. We also have the inaugural Big Ten Hockey Tournament, Big Ten Women's Basketball Tournament, and baseball and softball are just getting started. And we can't forget Wolverine Swimming and Diving, our Big Ten champions, also our top 10 ranked wrestling and gymnastics teams. There is so much to take in this time of year on the Michigan athletic scene. To help you keep up to speed, we invite you to become a member here at GBM Wolverine. Visit www.gbmwolverine today and sign up for free membership. You'll get the latest news and be able to participate on our message board and see what other Wolverine fans have to say. It's quick and easy to become a member. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up today. Make sure you're in the Wolverine loop this spring. The show is now available in the iTunes App Store and Android Store at Amazon.com. You can also find us in the Windows App Store, which is new. It's easier than ever to listen whenever or wherever you want to. So check out one of our show apps. That will do it for this week's show. Thanks again to Wolverine beat writer Mark Snyder from the Detroit Free Press for being our guest this week. On next week's show, we'll get ready for the Big Ten Basketball Tournament and hope to have Michigan great and current Wolverine radio analyst Terry Mills on as our guest. If there is anything new from spring football, we'll be sure to have someone on to cover that too. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Until next time, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!